Elle Magazine US. And there is a full article about Paige Bueckers where I'm sure so much more is said about Paige. If you are listening, if you're reading this and watching this video as a want to know more about Paige Bueckers, learn more about Paige Bueckers, that article is there for you. This is not a learn more about Paige Bueckers video. This is purely a video about one line in said article. So shout out to Elle Magazine for post. It says here, who has been tearing it up on the court and off the court this season's proud rival. And in fairness, she has been. If she robs Aaliyah Boston of unrivaled MVP, I'm going to be extremely annoyed because it is a robbery.
That reaction right there tells you everything about how precarious this situation has become. Because when one of the league's 5 most important players casually drops that there will be a season in a fashion magazine interview, that's not just news, that's a leak. And the fact that it's Paige Bueckers saying it matters more than you might think. Here's what just happened. LMI magazine published a profile on Paige Bueckers, and buried in the middle of an article about fashion and self-expression, there's a line in brackets that says, "Yes, she says there will be a season. Thank God." Now, most outlets would focus on the fashion angle, but that single line reveals something massive about where we are in these CBA negotiations.
What it is, it's nothing. The league isn't anything absolutely spectacular. That being said, Paige essentially saying that there will be a league is huge, because this is it's good hearing this from Paige. No quote tweets. Nobody has really talked much about this, and yeah, this is a huge one, because again, I've always said this where I'm regardless of the executive committee, there are 5 players.
And he's not wrong about the current content drought, because right now, the biggest story in women's basketball is a 3v3 league that, let's be honest, isn't moving the needle. The viewership numbers aren't there, the star power is diluted, and creators who built their channels covering the WNBA are stuck talking about off-season drama and labor negotiations instead of actual basketball. But here's why Paige Bueckers saying this matters so much. The WNBA Players Association has an executive committee leading these negotiations. Nneka Ogwumike is the president. Breanna Stewart is vice president. They're the official voices of the players. So when someone outside that committee starts publicly confirming there will be a season, that's significant. That's either supreme confidence that a deal is close, or it's a player who knows something the rest of us don't.
But I fully believe it is Paige, Angel, Sabrina, Aaliyah Boston might be in that conversation, but maybe she's the 6th. But Paige, Angel, Sabrina, A'ja Wilson, and obviously Caitlin Clark. If they are the player, if those players say, we don't care about if you guys strike, we don't care if you strike, we are walking the picket line, there's going to be a season no matter what. There won't be a strike. I don't think those players will do that. I'm not accusing those players of doing that. There's a 0% chance those players do that. That being said, we have to say that is how important the Paige Bueckers saying it is. Anyone outside of the executive committee, like Tash Cloud.
Now he's laying out something that sounds extreme, but it's worth examining, because there are 5 players in this league who have transcended the sport itself. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Bueckers, A'ja Wilson, and Sabrina Ionescu. These aren't just stars. They're the reason casual fans tune in. They're the reason ratings tripled last season. They're the reason brands are suddenly interested in women's basketball. And the uncomfortable truth is this: if those 5 players decided to cross a picket line, there would still be a season. Would it be the right thing to do? Absolutely not. Would it destroy player unity? Yes. But would the league survive? Would games still get played? Would people still watch? The answer is probably yes. And that gives those 5 players enormous leverage in these negotiations, whether they want it or not. Think about what happened last season. When Caitlin Clark played, viewership averaged over 2 million. When she didn't, it dropped back to pre-2024 levels. That's not a criticism of other players, that's just the reality of where the league's attention economy sits right now. 5 players are carrying the entire visibility of this league on their backs.
And I wouldn't be surprised if she decides to go to play with Rashid Mazian in she could decide to play with Rashid Mazian in Connecticut, and a system built around her, her replacing Tina Charles. I don't think, again, people realize this. If she replaces Tina Charles with everything that team has, it's okay. okay, now we're looking at a serious team. But yeah, we're looking at likelihood of there being a season. We genuinely are, because
here's where it gets interesting. Emma Meesseman and Jonquel Jones couldn't make it work together in New York. Meesseman averaged 9 points per game, which isn't bad, but she's a player who needs the ball in her hands to be effective. She's the closest thing to a female Nikola Jokic in terms of playmaking from the center position. She doesn't have Aaliyah Boston's athleticism or defensive versatility, but she's got a higher basketball IQ and better shooting touch. Now imagine if she ends up in Connecticut with Stephanie Dolson. That's a system that could actually be built around her strengths. She could replace Tina Charles in that offense, and suddenly you're looking at a legitimate playoff contender. Because Connecticut has the infrastructure, the coaching, and the complementary pieces to make that work. But here's why this matters for the CBA negotiations. Players like Maforde Span are exactly who the union is fighting for. She's a solid veteran who should be making more money. She's the kind of player who gets squeezed when the salary cap is too restrictive. And if the league expands to 15 or 16 teams like everyone expects, there's going to be more roster spots and more opportunity for players in that middle tier to get paid what they're worth.
One of those players, like if Caitlin Clark goes and says there will be a season, in any sort of an article, even if it's about her books, you take that as a big thing. Paige Bueckers saying it matters. It really does. Like, but like, I think when it comes down to it, I actually think the players, like the league and the players getting back to each other quickly means that there's going to be a season. Like they're getting back to each other really quickly. I think the players are, I still think nothing is going to be signed until the very last day. And the season could be like, look, if I'm the players, like, it's not the end of the world if they delay it by a few weeks. The problem is if they delay it by a certain number, like the season's already cramped as is, and it becomes tough. But like they could definitely delay it because if you look at the Indiana Fever schedule and some other teams, like the Indiana Fever literally have 3 back-to-backs and 2 random 6-day gaps in the middle of the season. Whereas the Dallas Wings have the most cakewalk schedule ever. The Dallas Wings don't have a back-to-back. The Fever have 3. Ironically, the star player who refuses to play back-to-backs has no back-to-backs. But yeah, look, this is an important...
This is the core of why Paige Bueckers' comment matters. Because the league and the players have been meeting regularly. They're negotiating in good faith. But nothing is getting signed until the absolute last possible moment. That's standard for any labor negotiation. You don't show your final cards until you have to. But here's what's different this time. The league has leverage it's never had before. Viewership is up, sponsorship money is flooding in. The business case for expansion is stronger than it's ever been. And the players know this is their moment to get a deal that actually reflects the league's new reality. The question is whether they can get it done without disrupting the season, and that's where the timeline gets tight. The 2025 schedule has already been released. Indiana has 3 back-to-back games scheduled. Dallas has 0, which is ironic, given that Aja Wilson refuses to play back-to-backs. The league has built in some flexibility with random 6-day gaps in the schedule, which suggests they're anticipating potential delays. Could they push the season start back by a few weeks if negotiations drag on? Probably. Would that be ideal? No, but it's better than canceling games entirely. And the fact that Paige Bueckers is confident enough to say there will be a season suggests the players aren't seriously considering a prolonged work stoppage.
Very important hearing Paige Bueckers saying this because, again, she's someone that matters. Like, I don't care what Tash Cloud says. I don't care what a random... Like, and I understand that they're absolutely they're caring about the little guy. They're caring about the players in the league. They're bargaining more for those players. Like, I absolutely understand that. But like, there are still 5 players that I do believe that if they decided to cross the picket line, that the league would be business as usual. Like, if the league lost every single player other than those 5, I genuinely think...
Now let's talk about Natasha Cloud, because this is where the dynamics get complicated. Cloud is on the executive committee. She's been one of the most vocal advocates for players' rights and better working conditions. And she should be. That's literally her job as a union representative. But here's the awkward part. Cloud wanted to return to New York. She made that clear. And the Liberty were like, "Yeah, we're not sure you're the ideal backcourt partner for Sabrina Ionescu." They were more interested in keeping Emma Miesemann, even though that didn't work out perfectly either. That's gotta sting when you're trying to lead labor negotiations and your own team is publicly lukewarm about bringing you back. This is the tension that exists in every professional sports union. The stars have different interests than the role players. The veterans have different priorities than the rookies, and the players leading the negotiations have to balance all of those competing interests while also dealing with their own career uncertainty. So here's what this all means. Paige Bueckers saying there will be a season isn't just a throwaway comment in a fashion magazine. It's a signal. It's one of the league's 5 most important players expressing confidence that a deal will get done. And that matters, because these 5 players, whether they like it or not, have the power to determine whether there's a season, not legally, not officially, but practically. If Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Bueckers, A'ja Wilson, and Sabrina Ionescu all said they were playing no matter what, the leverage dynamics would shift overnight. The union would lose its most powerful negotiating tool, which is the threat of no games. Now, would those players ever actually do that? No, there's zero chance. They're not going to cross a picket line, they're not going to undermine their fellow players, and they shouldn't. But the fact that they could creates a different kind of pressure in these negotiations. Think about it from the league's perspective. They know that if this drags on too long, if the season gets delayed significantly, they risk losing the momentum they built in 2024. They risk losing casual fans who might not come back if there's a prolonged work stoppage. They risk losing sponsorship money that's contingent on games actually being played. But from the players' perspective, this is their leverage moment. This is when they have the most power they've ever had. Viewership is up, revenue is up, public interest is up. If they can't get a fair deal now, when will they ever? The challenge is that fair means different things to different people. For a player like Natasha Cloud, fair means better minimum salaries, better travel conditions, better healthcare, better retirement benefits. For a player like A'ja Wilson, fair means the top players getting paid closer to what they'd make in a fully free market. For a player like Paige Bueckers, who hasn't even been drafted yet, fair means entering a league with a sustainable economic model that will still be thriving in 10 years. And here's what makes this negotiation particularly tricky. The league wants to expand. Everyone agrees expansion is coming, but expansion changes everything. More teams means more roster spots. More roster spots means more players getting paid. More players getting paid means the salary cap needs to be higher. But a higher salary cap requires more revenue. And more revenue requires the league to maintain the momentum it built last season. So you've got this circular dependency where everyone wants the same outcome, but they disagree on the timeline and the mechanism for getting there. The league wants to expand first, and then raise salaries as revenue grows. The players want guaranteed salary increases now, with expansion as a separate issue. And in the middle of all this, you've got Paige Bueckers casually telling a fashion magazine that there will be a season. That's not a leak in the traditional sense. She's not revealing negotiating positions or specific contract terms, but she is revealing confidence. She's revealing that the players, or at least the players who matter most for the league's visibility, believe a deal will get done. Is that confidence justified? Probably. Both sides have too much to lose by letting this fall apart. The league can't afford to cancel games after the best season in WNBA history. The players can't afford to sit out when they finally have mainstream attention. And the 5 players who are driving that attention definitely can't afford to be the reason the season doesn't happen. So when Paige Bueckers says there will be a season, believe her. Not because she's on the executive committee, not because she has inside information about the negotiations, but because she's one of the 5 players who, whether she wants this responsibility or not, will ultimately determine whether games get played. The real question isn't whether there will be a season. The real question is what kind of deal the players get. Will it be a transformative agreement that sets the league up for sustainable growth? Or will it be an incremental improvement that kicks the hard decisions down the road for another 5 years? Based on how quickly both sides have been getting back to each other, based on the fact that the schedule is already published, based on the fact that Paige Bueckers feels comfortable saying there will be a season, my guess is we're heading towards something in the middle. A solid deal that improves player compensation and working conditions, but doesn't fundamentally restructure the league's economic model. Is that enough? For some players, yes. For others, probably not. But it's likely where this lands. And when it does, we can finally get back to talking about actual basketball instead of labor negotiations and 3v3 leagues that nobody's watching. So here's my question for you. If you were negotiating for the players, what would be your non-negotiable demand? Higher minimum salary? Better travel conditions? Revenue sharing? A percentage of expansion fees? Because all of those are on the table right now, and the players have to decide which ones matter most. Let me know in the comments what you'd prioritize, and make sure you're subscribed because when this deal actually gets announced, we're going to break down exactly what the players won and what they gave up to get it.